Welcome to our epic ocean, where critical solutions to a planet in peril are brought to the surface. Our epic ocean celebrates all that is epic about the ocean and why it is the planet's most vital resource. And now to our host, Rich Gurman.
Hey, it's Rich Gurman, and welcome to the show. Award-winning designer and product developer Cyrill Gutsch founded Parley for the Oceans in 2012, taking on the ocean as a client to effect positive change. His website states the following: Parley is the space where creators, thinkers, and leaders come together to raise awareness for the beauty and fragility of our oceans and collaborate on projects that can end their destruction. Cyrill, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, Rich. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and pleasure. And I actually wait for your questions. I hope they're tough.
I'm going to be so tough, man. You don't even know what's coming. I'll be kind also, though. Maybe. We'll see how it goes. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I know you have a lot going on, and let's begin. So I want to start with your turning point story of meeting Paul Watson, the Sea Shepherd, back in, I think it was 2012 in Frankfurt. Can you tell me about that encounter and how it created the drive and direction of your work?
Yeah, Rich. In 2012, I attended the like an art show, Art Basel in Switzerland, and I also was actually there to visit my grandmother. I was living in New York, and it was a good reason to come to the Black Forest. When I met all the people at the show, I also met Pamela Anderson, and she was wearing a Sea Shepherd t-shirt. And I was like, hey, Pamela, what is the Jolly Roger on your t-shirt saying? What is your association with Sea Shepherd? And she's like, oh, I just came from Frankfurt and I brought like bail money to Captain Paul Watson. And I'm like, what? And she told me about him being arrested in Germany, and I was like shocked. I didn't know, you know. I'm originally from Germany, as you can hear, and as you see in my family name. Yeah, I felt like that has something to do with me. And back then I was definitely not in ocean conservation. I was still like, we just ended our, I would say, like biggest project back then. And we were like still running our design firm. But we were ready to change. We were ready to kind of go into a new direction. And we wanted to do something with collaboration in art. But in the same night, I dreamt of Paul being executed. And I was in the same room, standing there and doing nothing. And I woke up at 5 a.m. and I asked my cousin to drive me to the airport. I didn't have a driving license back then. I got lost on a highway for speeding.
That's another story.
Yep. So he drove me to the airport. I went to Frankfurt and I waited the whole day and for the lawyer of Paul Watson to connect with me. And pretty much late afternoon, I got the call, and half an hour later, met him in a small little law firm. And there was Captain Watson sitting there, and he was imprisoned in Germany, or he actually couldn't leave. He had to report to the police every day. And I asked him, I wanted to know who he is, you know. I wanted to know, is this a villain? Because back then he was like portrayed as a terrorist in the media. And I realized in minutes, this is not terrorist. This is a man that does all these things that we should do ourselves. He's doing our job, you know. He's protecting our environment, our future. And there was something triggered in me that, honestly, I ignored for a long time. And there was me knowing that I'm not contributing to this planet, me knowing that I'm cynical about the future of mankind, and me knowing that I gave up on the future of the environment. Because honestly, back then I felt that we are just eating this planet up anyway. You know, what can I do? And I felt like a coward sitting there listening to him, like useless, you know, like he is a coward focusing his whole career on himself, making money, winning awards, and defining himself like some colors and logos and whatever product innovations. And then I asked him, I said, Paul, listen, what is the deadline? You're speaking about the oceans dying, you're speaking about us not being able to live without the sea on this planet, but what's the ultimate deadline? When are the oceans dying? And he shot at me 2048. And I love deadlines, you know. I'm triggered by deadlines. And so I went to the bathroom and first Googled and found a study from 2006, I think. And the United Nations recognized a study by Ben Happen and Boris Worm that predicted that if we continue fishing the way we did back then all the big fisheries would deplete in 2048. That means 36 years out from that moment I read this. That shocked me. And what shocked me even more was that I never heard about it. It was not on the front page news. There were no protests on the street. There was not like big parades or something going on to fight for the oceans. And I called my partner, Leah, in New York, and we were running a design firm back then. And I said, listen, Leah, I think we should stop being a design firm. There's something bigger. And she was so ready. She didn't even hesitate. She's like, okay, let's do it. Let's actually, we can use our skills for something useful, And I went back into the room and became first a student, really, because I had to learn, and then an environmentalist.
Amazing. What was I think he shared a line with you, something about the lost causes are the only ones we're fighting for?
Exactly. I asked him, I said, hey, Paul, honestly, what tells you that we can turn this around? What keeps you going? And he said, he actually quoted Winston Churchill. He said, hey, lost causes are the only ones worth fighting for. There was something sexy in there out of different reasons. Yeah. Because as a designer, you always think you have to deliver yourself. Everything is on you. It's an ego show. And I felt suddenly, hey, how beautiful would it be to be part of a movement and do it with others and collaborate and do the best you can. Because that's also what he said. He said, listen, Cyrill, it's not about I am ending the war against the oceans. It's not I am solving this. It's like I do the best I can, and I stand up for a belief, and I help to manifest a mindset. And I think there was something in there that was just beautiful. And there was something in there where I really waited for, just to give up my ego to a certain extent,
100%, and we'll definitely talk more about that. So Paul is for sure a controversial guy, but anyone who fights to save whales is okay in my book. In fact, you and he were both just featured in the new documentary Seaspiracy. How was it for you to be featured with someone that you really look up to like him?
I mean, first of all, Paul, in my eyes, he picked a route himself, but he has a very clear strategy of what he can contribute, and that dates back to Robert Hunter and the foundation of Greenpeace, which is all about delivering people the opportunity to rethink how they're looking at things, right? Creating these shock moments. And of course, people don't like him because he is creating these shock moments and he is making people think and rethink. But I don't think he's hostile or anything. He's a very friendly, humorous and extremely well-educated person, and he became a dear friend. And honestly, at the beginning, I had a lot of problems of being close to him. People pretty much attacked me. They still do. Other organizations do. But I don't care. It's like he brought me to the cause, and he's honest, and he's a good man. And he's a dear friend. And when we look at the Seaspiracy documentary, then you see another man that has courage. Ali is come on. He goes out there and risks his life. Young, and honestly, he has a life to lose. And he also doesn't hesitate to speak to both sides. And of course, it's a very personal film. It's like his perspective. There is one narrative. That's his film. It's his opinion. I respect that. I don't honestly agree with everything in the film, but I totally respect his point of view. And most of all, I respect the courage. And there are two very dear friends in there, too. I mean, Paul is one and Sylvia Earle is the other. They are both. I would say these two cover for me the two poles of the environmental movement. One is empathy, beauty, fragility, and the other one is confrontation and trying to show the cracks of the system. And that's Paul.
Yeah, well said. So I actually want to talk more about the film, and we'll get to that.
Of course.
And definitely we'll get into things like technology, innovation, and design. But I really want to begin with the deeper reasons that you, and me also, why we do what we do. In the last decade, I've had over 2,000 dolphin and whale encounters, including in the Silver Bank in the Dominican Republic. I spent 2 hours hovering right above a singing humpback whale. So I know there's great wisdom that we can learn from dolphins and whales. You have a whale song that people can download on your website. I feel like humans can barely communicate with each other, right? But what do you feel we can learn by communicating with other species like whales who are just way more in tune with nature than we are?
First of all, communicating in truth. I think we never really honestly or truthfully communicate. We always stain and tint things. We always, even if I say hello, the way I say it makes already a big difference. If I describe a house, if I describe something what I like or dislike, it's personal. It's like individually stained and tinted. And what whales do, they communicate. At least that's what scientists suggest. They communicate in true pictures and true information and true knowledge. And there's something very, at least in my romanticized interpretation of that, there's a benchmark there of how we can learn to communicate differently, And the second thing is communicational behavior, and like taking care of your people, and taking care of things. But then also the role that one has to play within an ecosystem. Whales are the gardeners of the oceans, and they contribute. They're an important part. And I think we humans, we don't understand that we are, right? We think that we have this parallel reality, and we even sometimes think we are better than nature. I mean, nature had millions of years of research and development, and there we come, and we think we improve nature with our silly inventions. I think we should become humble, humble like a whale.
Humble like a whale, and forgiving. To me, whales
forgiving.
represent forgiveness. When you think about what we've done to them, many species of whales just pretty much decimated them and still are to this day, and yet they still want to interact with us. They still want to be with us. We can definitely learn a lot.
Must be love, because there must be an endless deep love and also a deep understanding. They probably understand how sad we are, actually. It seems we are. Otherwise, we would kill everything.
We do. Oh man. So you describe Parley as a negotiation of peace between mankind and the ocean. What does that mean? And tell us the objectives of the organization. You're about a decade old now, is that right?
Oh man. Next year, 10 years. Yeah. At the beginning I felt that what is missing really is this moment, or this where people come together, this glue, where you put opponents on a table and create a vision, a mutual vision, because I think the environmental movement was too long, too much based on shame and blame, throwing people things in the face is not really helping. I mean, honestly, it's good that environmentalists like this exist, but it's not my role. I try to fix things, As a designer, you are like trained to find solutions and to understand in a holistic way, complex problems, and solve them, simplify them and solve them. And I think that was our role. Our role was to say, how can we help the current players, the ones that are creating the damage, the sinners, how can you connect them with people who know, and people who want to solve problems, and assuming that nobody gets up in the morning and wants to destroy the oceans, everybody has a heart, has feelings, and I don't per se see that people have bad intentions, I assume best intentions. That's the starting point. And then I feel like if we get them to know, get them to experience and know with their heart, but also know with their brain, and then show them how they can do what they do today, but differently tomorrow. Because a lot of these issues are caused by the economic systems that we are running, and I'm a child of capitalism. That means capitalism gave me everything as a designer, So I'm not against the system, and also we can't change it so fast, to be very honest. We are running out of time. So I believe that it's all about collaboration, creativity, and eco-innovation. We just have to create a new economy, and rethink how we are making things, how we are eating things, how we are discarding stuff, And that is pretty much what Parley is. We are a collaboration network with exactly that purpose. It's about positivity, really.
Really, I'm with you. In fact, like you, I'm a huge believer in collaboration. I made a statement years ago where I said that collaboration is dead and that, competition is dead and that collaboration is the new competition.
I love that.
And to solve the challenges of the world, we need to work together. So how do you use that collaborative spirit as a tool?
I mean, first of all, you have to understand that yourself, you can't fix these complex problems. There is no superhero that can just fly in and solve it. It's like the origin is in its complexity. Some people establish standards, other people accept these standards and build full industries around them. And then create and make, and then it's this whole beast grows around it, and suddenly you can't change it anymore because a full society is running on a material like fossil fuel or plastic or other chemicals, And the only way to truly fix it is to align with the people who know, because that's the first piece. You can't assume that you know everything. And even if you know something today, it doesn't mean that you know it 10 minutes later, because knowledge changes, science is fast, And first thing is you need to be tapped into the best knowledge sources, which are people, the best scientists, the best entrepreneurs, the best activists. And then you have to find a way to get all that knowledge in and translate it into a strategy. And then you have to implement that strategy and do it in a way that people can do it with you or without you. And you shouldn't be angry if people copy you. It's okay. It's fine. They should quote you. They can even take your quotes for their own. It doesn't really matter. It's just important that you inspire and empower so many people that technically we're all heading towards the same direction. And the first piece is really to create a logical construct. Otherwise, we can't fix these issues, and especially not in that time. And coming from the industry, and seeing how big corporations, where everybody thinks they're so smart, how they struggle to change, but still doing that on a very highly developed and sophisticated level of failure. Learning from that helped me a lot, And now it's really about how can we win time? How can we use collaboration? And also often the needs of people or the excitement of people by lining up around a vision and saying, oh yes, this vision is a beautiful one. I'm gonna let go of how I do things in the past if this vision comes through. And I could be the first one to do it, or one of the first ones. So technically, why people really change is, again, competition. Competition, collaboration is very close. That's why I like your quote. There's something in there where people want to collaborate, but they also want to be the first ones. That means you collaborate with the right people, because you can't be the first one alone. And that's where we are heading at. We are more or less saying, this is a material revolution right now. And it's pretty much based on the same principle as the digital revolution happened, where everything went from analog to digital. And now we're going from toxic, exploitative stuff to a new generation of material, because we can't afford it anymore and people will not accept it, because consumers out there, at some point, they will simply not buy into brands anymore that are destructive. Because there's something so deep in us that we feel that the future is not anymore built on that old idea of a predator, We feel that because we are humans, we are like creatures, we are like champions of survival. We know what is good for us, deep in us. And marketing and all these weird informations, they kind of sometimes try to take over of these instincts. But deep in us, we know what is good for us. And that's why I believe the future is in collaboration. The future is in new technology. And the future is in letting go of all the harmful stuff that we put out there the last 50 years.
100%. Wow. You just brought 100 questions into my head.
Sorry, Rich.
That's okay. I'm going to go with this. So climate change, overfishing, and plastic pollution are definitely three of your big focuses.
Yeah.
And while plastic is obviously a big problem, it seems to have stolen the spotlight from the bigger threats. I've heard you call plastic a symbol, a flag. Can you explain what that means, and how is solving the plastic issue vital to the overall equation?
So here is where I don't agree with a lot of these points that people see in the film, Seaspiracy. And he didn't say it like that. He didn't say plastic is not a problem. He said, why are we focusing on straws? And I agree with that. Yeah, leaving away straws is something you should just do. We should not even talk about it. It's just, but plastic is a massive issue. And I would say it's for us in 2012 when we started Parley, we decided to push plastic into the forefront. Still doing our work in illegal fishing, overfishing. Climate change, we're holding back because we couldn't do three things at the beginning. We're coming back to that now. But we saw back then that the broad masses were not reacting to frontline news. They were not reacting when they came sparsely through. They would not react and say, no, I changed my diet. They weren't ready for it. And we felt that the plastic movement could become the stepping stone for the bigger problems of overfishing, illegal fishing, and climate change. Because it's something very tangible, and it's something very, it sounds crazy when I say that, but it's nearly positive. Because you're looking at, even if you look at the saddest of all stories, like plastic in the belly of a bird, it's colorful, it's like all these items that you know, it feels so familiar. So you identify with it, you build a personal relationship, you compare it with the things that you see in the supermarket or in your refrigerator. You feel guilty about it because you could change something about that. When you look at these pictures in Faroe Islands with like cut open whales, blood everywhere, you see shins with the fins cut off. You see all this horror and the tragedy, exploitation, slavery out there. This is so intense for people that they look away. They don't want to see it. They don't feel that this is something they relate to. They don't see themselves. And I battled with that the first year of Parley, because I tried to get these topics into the mass media back then. And they all said to me, this is too violent. People don't want to see it. And I really discussed that with like people that run television networks. And they showed me all the data. People were subbing away. And we felt then, hey, we need a gateway drug. We need something that opens the minds. And plastic was exactly that, because people relate to it. They see it everywhere suddenly once they understand the problem. And they can do something about it right away. And we thought, if we can create a super trend around plastic, we can do the same again for the other causes as well. But we first also, as a young organization, had to prove ourselves, you know? And I also wanted to find something positive. I didn't want to say, oh, you all are bad, and there's all bad, pointing fingers. No, I want to say, listen, there is something we can do about this, you know? Which actually, agree. That's the key. You know, you can't let people out of a cinema or out of their own personal viewing room at home or out of their laptop moment here, and then just wanting to kill themselves because the world is dying and they can't do anything. You know, that's not good. We want to empower them, not disempower them.
Yeah, they feel helpless if they can't do anything. And to your point with plastic, I can stop using single-use plastic bags. I can clean up a piece of plastic in the ocean on the beach. So I like that, as you call it.
It's a beginning.
The gateway drug. That's the beginning.
It's a beginning, and it doesn't mean we're ending here. And we at Parley have shown that we're doing all these things, you know. But you also have to be very careful how you position yourself, because you only have as much resources, you only have as much staff, and you have to pick your battles, you know. And you have to see when is the timing right. And I tell you, to make the vegan movement like large, you know. It took some moments, it took some films, it took Racing Extinction, it took the Game Changers, it took big companies like Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, or Good Catch, or all these companies. It took them to kind of actually establish their product. Or Oatly. You know, suddenly there are alternatives all over the place. There's no reason anymore to eat meat or fish, you know. And now is the moment, I think. I think now is the moment to take on the next big challenge in the public communication. And now the time is right to end eating fish. And that's why I'm very happy that Seaspiracy is coming out now, where people are still bound to their Netflix accounts and sitting at home.
Yeah, the movie's doing great too. I actually interviewed Luis Sohoyes just a week or so ago, and so
another dear
we'll
friend.
Get into that. Yeah, he's amazing. Man. So we'll talk about him and fish and Sylvia in a little while. But let's stick with plastic for a minute. You created a shoe from ocean plastic. You presented it to the UN. You did a big deal with Adidas. How did this all come about, and what's the next level to this project?
Yeah. So first of all, it started with the very German back then idea that recycling could be the solution for this problem. Yeah, which is wrong. Yeah, recycling will not end the plastic problem, but it's a band-aid. It's the best thing we can do right now, for lots of applications where we can't avoid plastic. And the long-term solution for a problem like marine plastic pollution or the global plastic crisis, you might even call it, are new materials. That's the future, right? But people will not invest into new materials if they don't see a demand, if they don't understand why these old materials need to go. And when we started 9 years ago, people believed in plastic. They trusted in plastic. They believed it's healthy actually to have these products made from plastic. So we had to break that trust first. And you can try that from an outsider perspective and from an environmental standpoint. And you can try it, like I would say, by being out there in the backyard and throwing stones. or you find yourself strong allies. And our concept was to say, let's take marine plastic pollution, find a reason why people would support cleanups, find a way to fund cleanup in a large scale, and use these cleanups as a confrontation with that problem. It's a visualization, it's a campaign asset, really, where people see beautiful, beautiful places, and they see an alien matter doesn't belong there. It's plastic. And if you participate in a cleanup, then you learn. You will never unlearn. You see every item in your life, you will see in that context of where it doesn't belong. On the beach, in the belly of a bird, or in a mammal. It doesn't belong there. So you're automatically recalibrating, you're saying, it's not actually such a good material. And what we felt back then, we said, hey, we need to give that whole problem, marine plastic pollution, marine debris, marine litter, we have to give it a new name, a name of opportunity, a catalyst, really. And we created, because we're coming from a branding standpoint, we created a new word for it, ocean plastic. We even trademarked it back then. We felt like if we win big corporations to buy into the idea of ocean plastic and simultaneously commit that they would phase out virgin plastic and cut down the use of plastic, then we can make a dent. And with that idea, we went to Adidas and said, listen, why would we not take a ghost net that, in this case, Sea Shepherd brought home from their ice fish campaign, turn it into a shoe and combine it with plastic bottles we retrieved in the Maldives? Why wouldn't we not combine this and say, here's a symbol of change that communicates a large problem, but also right away shows there is an answer to that, And that was very successful. And today, Adidas is running, I think they're spending more money into campaigning against plastic than any other environmental organization on this planet, because their claim this year is to end plastic.
And when it first came out, wasn't it like the biggest unpaid campaign they ever had?
Oh yeah. They didn't believe that this would be so successful. They had no idea. I mean, they believed in the concept and in the vision, and they believed in us, but they didn't believe that it would change their business. Yeah, and they changed their business. And they, in the beginning, even the top guys in the organization believed, I would say, in the reason why they would do it, but they couldn't see they couldn't see that their consumer was seeing that as relevant. And I heard it over years from key people in the organization that said, I still doubt that this is relevant to our consumer, the young kids. So wrong. The young kids were the first ones to pick it up.
I would think so. 100%.
Oh yeah, because they see, and it makes total sense for them. And suddenly, we wanted to make it super hot and sexy and cool to fight for the planet, And totally. Who's better than Adidas? I mean, they're like collaboration masters, and also they are big sinners. They are plastic monsters. So if they can go out and say, you know what, you want to do it differently, there is no excuse for anybody else.
That is amazing. How did that feel for you? I mean, was that your big coming out in terms of putting that deal together? And what I mean?
No, it wasn't actually. It was, to be honest, it was a very painful process. Because we at the beginning believed that we could collaborate a lot with environmental organizations, and we lined up with a lot of them, at the beginning. And the moment there was success, they tried to backstab as they could. They were anxious that there would be. I think on one side they were seeing us breaking a taboo, environmental organizations partnering with brands. So some were really concerned about the integrity of the environmental movement. And others were jealous. And that was, the first summer when we launched the product, it took me, I think, 200 to convince 200 individuals that were ready to take me down, like environmentalists, that were signing petitions behind closed doors, and they're preparing a really bad campaign against us. And wow. I knew if this is happening, Adidas will step out, the whole thing is dead, And so I talked to them and said, listen, give me some years. Give me 3 years. And then if Adidas is not phasing out virgin plastic in general, is not becoming a big campaigner for the cause, and if we at Parley fail, kill me, grill me, destroy my name, but not now. Give me an opportunity, give me a chance. And most of them did.
I can see the jealousy, unfortunately, but I don't get the other piece. If the brand partnership, what would be the problem? If you're getting brands to use better materials, what was the issue?
Yeah, back then it was different than today. I think we really built that bridge back then between these two very extreme camps of big corporations and environmentalists. I think back then also people, you have to see it this way. Environmentalism is a business, even, and it's honestly, it's more competitive often than the private sector, because people who are in the environmental movement are often not only driven by their salaries, they're also driven by fame and what people think about them. So the individual credibility plays a very big role. I want to be the best, and everybody has to look up to me, and so there's a lot of infighting already anyway. But in this specific case, they just were on one. I think it was easier for people to take an anti-position than a supportive position. And they loved to bash somebody, and especially a newbie, with the big glasses in his face. Who is the guy? What does he think? Why would he now know?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, it must have been the glasses, man.
Yeah, it's fair. What is this diver doing?
Exactly. That's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. So let's talk technology and innovation and its role in fixing the problems that we face. It seems to me that while the evolution of human consciousness is a slow process, similar to what we're saying here, that technology happens fast. So my question is, can technology, quote unquote, save the world before it's too late? And does it need to happen parallel to an awakening in consciousness?
I think technology is not happening if there is no awakening on one side, but on the other hand, the true awakening is happening once the alternatives are there. So there is a certain group in society, I would really say 1 to 7%, that is open to new, that is pushing new and is demanding to change and questioning the old, right? These are just some people. But fortunately, these people have a loud voice. And today, where everything is so connected, this voice has been heard, right? So actually, if 1% of society says, hey, we want to change this, then suddenly it pops up everywhere in trend reports. Everybody sees, oh my God, there is a problem. Because they can understand if these kind of people jump on it, it will have to change and other people will follow. So that's one aspect. That's the grassroots movement. So you try to kind of encourage people to speak out, and you try to kind of change their mind. And what we have done over the last 9 years is like pinging into these epicenters of society, getting the artists behind it, the fashion designers, getting the in all these layers. Like, look at this 1% that can change a society. Who are these people, and who is actually exactly in these epicenters? That's what we were doing for 9 years, pinging these people and equipping them with knowledge, inspiring them, and making them observe what is going on. So that's the grassroots piece. And then there is the technology piece coming from the other side. We saw what happened the moment enough people believed in the internet. Then suddenly they put massive investments out, and then suddenly it became a new standard. And that happened relatively fast, under 10 years, And that's the same what I'm seeing here now. We are reaching now the point where enough investors, enough governments believe that new materials are being needed. So they're now starting to invest. And with that comes a new generation of materials, substitutes for plastic. We already have substitutes or replacements for meat, in some cases mycelium-based, even for leather. We can now think about other harmful stuff that we can replace. Lots of chemicals can be already replaced with green chemistry solutions, right? So the technology starts to come in, people have more financial interest to make them big, and at some point you will just jump over the edge where these new technologies will be new standards. So people say, oh, you know what, I made this from future X material. What, are you still using fossil fuel? That's plastic, that's old school, you can't do that. That will happen. And our role at Parley is to shorten that time frame. That's our role. We're just doing something, we're just expediting something that would happen anyways. We're just trying to do that in, let's say, 5 to 10 years instead of 20 to 30 years. Because the material...
Yeah. No, I was going to say, you're drawing a parallel between how fast the digital revolution happened, and you're seeing it happen as fast, if not faster, with material revolution.
It will take probably a little longer than the digital revolution, but I'm comparing these two revolutions because they have both been extremely significant for a kind of an industrial revolution. For sure. And they were both driven by some people that saw the future, and they were then accepted by the broad masses as a new standard. And I see the same happening with materials, because somebody who is vegan and suddenly can eat vegan products will probably never go back. They just feel better, they see something, they're socializing with this new material in a new form. and suddenly they just know the future, and they look at everything else as outdated.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you became a vegan 40 years ago, A, people would look at you like you were an alien. B, you would have a hard time going to a restaurant, that's for sure, let alone grocery stores. And now it's a lot easier. And maybe, I mean, you're in New York, I'm in Southern California. Maybe it's not that way in the middle of the country, but it's definitely evolving. Yeah.
Yes, and honestly, you can just ask your deli. If you live in the middle of the country, you just pester your deli, your grocery store, or your restaurant. They can just order it. It's not that they have to start a new farm that is like just using vegetables. No, they can just order it somewhere. So it's available. And I think that's the situation where materials are now getting slowly available. But everybody who's putting something out that is different is being celebrated. And that's new.
Yeah.
So that's very different from when we started. People laughed at us. They laughed their ass off, to be honest. They're like, what the hell? You're questioning plastic? Are you stupid? That's the future.
Well, let's talk about the future. You talked a little bit about recycling being the past, and you call green chemistry, biofabrication, and digital the future.
Yeah.
Just let's start with defining what each of those three is, if you could.
Yeah. I mean, we are confronted with these materials that over the last 50 years were made. And plastic is for me really a symbol. It's like nearly a poster boy or poster girl for all the other toxic substances or the other methods that we created, chemicals in a broad variety, like look at pesticides, fertilizers, additives. I mean, there's so much out there. And then when you look at these materials and they're out there somewhere, to a certain level, it makes sense to retrieve them. Why would we not if we can? And we are still, I would say, there's still a long transition phase from using old materials like plastic to the moment where we have at scale new materials. So we have to gap that. And in this time, we should just take that stuff that is out there and use it instead of making more. And the same then counts for other industries. There is a transition phase, from how we do business today and how we want to do it tomorrow. And we believe that on one side, we can't ignore the past and all the damage that these materials are doing. We have to confront ourselves with them. We have to deal with them, and we have to use them as campaigning mechanism to introduce and prepare clients out there or consumers out there for the new. And also work with the supply chains, because if you don't know the supply chains, if you don't know the companies that are actually making all these things, because these brands don't do it, it's like massive manufacturing infrastructure that is not owned by these brands that we're seeing. They're just making everything for these brands. Yeah. You have to have them in your back. They need to understand that, oh yes, it worked with ocean plastic. So if they're now coming back with like a protein-based leather that is grown in a laboratory, then we should test that too. Probably that could be a next success. So you need to win these people. And green chemistry, which is pretty much invented by John Warner, which is also a dear friend and Parley ally, has the principle of replacing toxic substances with like non-toxic or less harmful materials, and biofabrication means that you're growing things that otherwise would grow in nature, or other or enzymes or bacteria, algae, mammalian, or like these little building or these little creators that make things, that grow your hair, that grow your skin, that color your eyes, and that grow the leaves, or create this fantastic high-tech packaging called coconuts. These guys, why wouldn't we not collaborate with them? And that's biofabrication, grow stuff and learn from millions of years of research and development of nature and give it your human touch, And then digital. I mean, to be honest, digital is crucial here, because why would I not know everything about a product I consume? Why would I not be able to make a very smart judgment call the moment something has been offered to me and say, I'm giving now $150 to this guy, it's a headphone. What do I actually do by buying this? What do I support? What is the brand doing? What is the material that is in there? Should I really buy that? Or should I buy something else that probably looks better and costs $10 less or $20 more, but actually that is contributing into the right direction? And that's what we want. We want people to have the opportunity to choose and access to true knowledge, because we also learned in Seaspiracy is that these labels, that people learned over the decades, you can't always trust them, or you can't trust them, or you only can trust them to a certain extent. And I think the consumer today is more intelligent than that, way more. We know, we can find out. So why would not every product allow us to identify what it is? That's what I mean with digital.
Traceability. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think all that together are the drivers of the material revolution. Like deal with the past, recycling, replace toxic chemicals with green chemistry, learn to grow stuff as nature does, and then find a way to connect that to our brain, because we can't find out what the material does by just sniffing on it. We need a translator.
So let's talk more about the non-toxic stuff. We mentioned Luis Ahoyas. I also interviewed the other Louis, we'll call him Louis Schwartzberg, who I'm sure who made the movie Fantastic Fungi. Louis is amazing.
Super.
If you don't know
Also a great film, by the way.
Oh, such a good film. And that movie included Paul Stamets, obviously. So you are leading this inclusive, which I love, global material revolution with the goal, as you said, to replace toxic materials with new non-toxic materials like mycelium, mushrooms, and whatnot. So knowing that the wisdom is in the ocean, the wisdom's in the trees and in the soil, what do you see as being possible in the next, let's say, 10, 20 years? Can we get to that point of eliminating the toxic materials with these new natural materials? Not new, but with natural materials.
I think there's a lot of bad things you can say about mankind. But as you probably realized, that I'm a bit of an optimist and I believe in humans.
I like that about you. Yeah.
So I think there's something very beautiful about humans where, first of all, we still have fun, even if the world totally burns down. We still find a way to escape these very bad news all the time. Yeah. And the second is, we are really driven by the impossible. It's like, if there's something impossible, my God, it excites us. We want to beat the odds all the time. We want to invent, we want to create. And I think that is probably why environmentalism doesn't really work, because they were so negative. You want to tell people, hey, there's an impossible mission, you're going to die if you don't invent your way out of this. And then suddenly everybody's like, what can I do with a banana leaf? What can I do with that? And suddenly there's an explosion of new. And that's why I believe we can do pretty much everything we can imagine. So, issue though is we are a lot of people, right? I mean, it's like 8 billion people. And to organize 8 billion people is a bit of a challenge. So we have to kind of allow ourselves to think big and look at this whole process of the next 10 years. And let's be honest, we're going to miss every deadline. We're going to see so much destruction. But let's say 20 years, but we should officially say 10 years. It sounds better, but we're going to miss that deadline. So 10 years, we're going to go for 10 years, and we can just organize it like a project and say, plastic can go like this and this order, meat can go like this, and then build strong alliances and say, hey, here are 200 companies. They're not just signing a paper for a petition, but they're saying, you know what, we're going to take everything one other person makes from this ingredient if they meet certain specs and criteria. That gives the finance industry, with their trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, enough justification to put money behind it. And then, boom, after 10 years, I honestly believe in 10 years, we have a replacement for everything that is harmful, but we will not have it at scale. It will not be that everything is replaced. We probably will see the top 5,000 companies in the world working with these materials or starting to work with these materials. But to really scale it up, to really make it a new standard, it would take another 10 years. That's my assumption. I think in 20 years from now, we could have replaced everything what we today see that is destructive.
Okay, and 20 years is, well, we're kind of at this race against time, so hopefully...
Yeah, we're going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to lose a lot because I'm quoting Sylvia Earle, the next 10 years are defining the next 10,000 years because we're driving species into extinction. And some people would now right away deny what I'm saying next, but if a species is going into extinction, normally the species is gone. And of course, the people who say they can bring it back, with like some serious DNA research, I don't know, is that really the same? Or are we like with cloning and it's like an artificial version of something? I don't want to lose the original.
No.
And it's a very bad world if you think that you recreated everything in a lab. You know, you wanna have the natural world surviving.
100%. So what you just described a minute ago, I feel like you kind of oversimplified a very complex process when you talk about design process and supply chains and collaborating with the best people in the world. This feels very complex to me. So I guess my question is, how does innovation get led? Meaning, how do we create this master plan, and who's going to lead it without egos getting in the way? Like we were talking about, jealousy and money. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but how's this going to play out?
No, it's brutal. You're right, Rich. It's brutal. I mean, honestly, I have 90 to 100-hour weeks, and 90% of that time is convincing people to take a risk and to do something they don't want to do. They like to talk about it, but they don't want to do it. And it can be just filling out a form and saying, I want this material to be tested in a product. As simple. They would not lose their job. They just don't want to do it. Or they see, why would I do it? I like the guy who's providing me the raw material for the plastic. Or I love leather. But personally, I believe I want leather to be. I don't want to replace it. That's the job that we're having at Parley. It's like non-stop talking to people and convincing them to do something. While in the back, we have to develop strategies and see what is actually what we're recommending. You know, and here's the only way that I see is working. Find a company, turn them around completely. Find a country, turn them around completely. Find individuals, turn them around completely. Make them so proud of like their new discovery of making things new. They're gonna create so much pressure out there by just being new that the competitors have to follow. And that was the reason why we did Adidas. You know, it was a big sinner. Why has Nike now a space hippie shoe out there? Because they couldn't ignore it anymore. You know, why is recycling suddenly all over the place? Because they couldn't ignore it anymore. And that's the same what you have to do, what Tesla did in automotive. Hey, he changed the automotive industry by just creating a competitive brand that everybody laughed about first. And that's what we have to do. That's what Oatly is doing in milk. Beyond Burger and Impossible is doing in meat. We have to do it in every category. We have to have the first example, the first champions. And as consumer, we have to support them, even if it's at the beginning a bit more expensive and probably not as perfect. Who cares? It's like the internet in the beginning was also buggy and laggy and pixely, you know? Support it. It's the future.
And if I'm hearing you right, you're willing to make them the hero versus you, right? So
yeah, it's not about me.
Champion of the environment, yeah.
No, it's not about me. At the beginning, I thought nobody will ever see my face. And we worked only with celebrities, but then it's very complicated. These guys, oh my God. So at some point, I decided to kind of overcome my fear to speak in public and did it myself. But I mean, the beginning was hard. You know, I thought like, I just sit there and create ideas and other people do it. And then boom, you know, it didn't work out that way.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about climate change. So a lot of great work is being done to work with nature to sequester carbon, planting of trees, sea trees, kelp forests, mangroves, etc. People like Celine Cousteau working in the Amazon.
I love Celine.
I've interviewed Celine. She is the sweetest
fantastic
woman.
person.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
We also just interviewed Michael Stewart of Sea Trees.
Yes.
And the work they're doing is great. So what can we do about climate change?
So when we were looking back then at plastic pollution, we felt that plastic is a replacement for all other problems. Yeah, climate change and overfishing. And when you compare it with climate change, then both are pollutants in the form where they land, you know. Carbon emissions don't belong in the atmosphere. So they are actually more or less the same as marine plastic pollution. And we developed back then a strategy called AIR, Avoid, Intercept, and Redesign. And it was based on the fact that most of the oxygen we are breathing in is generated by life in the oceans. And if we lose that life, we're going to lose the air we breathe. And Avoid, Intercept, and Redesign means avoid a harmful substance as best as you can, intercept such harmful substances, and use them instead of creating more other stuff, and redesign the origin that causes the pollutant, this harmful substance. And you can translate that to carbon and say, intercept that stuff, and there's a natural way that you just described, and there's a mankind way, more like a vacuum cleaner, get it out, convert it into something and store it somewhere or use it for something else. And of course, the oceans have a massive role to play in intercepting carbon emissions. And I'm talking CO2, but I'm also talking methane gas, right? And what you just said is sequestering means holding that CO2 and burying it with them, ideally taking it for life and embrace it and just keep it there, store it somewhere where it doesn't do harm, not giving it away, which seagrass does. Yeah, a lot of other water plants do that. Normal trees don't do that. Normal trees, if you chop them down and you don't bury them under earth, they just release again. That's what we're seeing with big wildfires. And when you're comparing normal regular trees, and I love trees, so trees planting is amazing, but also protecting existing trees is important. Leaving these organisms, and it's another discussion we could have about the life of trees, Peter Wohlberg, but the truth is that you want these ecosystems above land take care of things, but then suddenly you have mangroves that take in way more CO2 than the regular trees. And then you're going underwater and the seagrass is taking in suddenly even more than them. And they actually don't burn down so easily. And seagrass has another very important role to play. They're slowing down the incoming currents. So they're protecting the coastlines against erosion, and they're also turning these areas into natural habitats for animals. So they're actually helping animals to find homes again. So we believe in seagrass, and we have a big project running right now in starting protecting and forcing underwater forests, seagrass forests, really. And there's another upside to that. You're fighting climate change, but on the same side, if you collaborate with local fishermen, you're also giving them jobs, so they can harvest their stuff and just suddenly feed into a algae or seagrass industry, which is great for their families because they're not at sea all the week long, you know, and they're making probably more and save money. And anyways, we don't want them out there to kill fish. We want them to not kill fish. So become a seagrass farmer, make more money, do something against climate change, and also protect your waters against fishing. So that's the natural piece. But then are also whales, you know. There's a long story about whales and how they poo and all that kind of more or less how they sequester carbon as well. Again, as the gardeners of the sea. So actually protecting whales is super important. Natural environments like marine parks are important. But there is a saturation level to the CO2 that the oceans can take in and absorb. And to be honest, we already have now a deficit or a debt of around 2,000 gigatons of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. We have to plant a lot of trees and get in some million whales to absorb that. And that won't happen in the next 10 years. So we have to kind of do on one side support natural interception by protecting life, marine life and plants. On the other side, we have to find ways to intercept that stuff in a high-tech way. And you saw probably that Elon Musk is calling out big X prizes, and Bill Gates is behind. Lots of people are behind like capturing carbon. But the big trick is, what are you doing with that captured carbon? And I attended a lot of like MIT sessions and NASA sessions of like, how do we store that stuff? And some had the idea to push it back into the earth or even store it down in a seabed or things like that. That's wrong, you know. I think that we should just see carbon emissions up there as a super abundant raw material, the same way marine plastic pollution was an abundant material, and turn it into new materials. And we are running on a carbon-based planet, you know, we're all carbon here. So why would we not find a way to use that stuff up, you know? And the simplest application can be turning it into a diamond. That's easy, you just press it, you know. But then there are other things, you can use it as a feedstock to grow things, grow all the materials that we need, you know. It can be done. That's again a job for biofabrication, because biofabrication at the end, if you're growing things, you need something to go in. And you don't want to chop down all the forests and put like corn fields there to give that feedstock. So why wouldn't we not take something that is there already, you know? And I think in this whole world we are spinning right now, and we are looking at what does it really mean to intercept all the, I think 30 gigatons per year that we're adding. How can we intercept what we're adding every year? And how can we take out of the atmosphere large parts of the 2,000 gigatons that are up there? It's a math example, and then it's a question like how fast can we run against time? But I believe at some moment in time, there will be endless capital available to fight this problem, because it becomes the biggest security risk on the planet.
Definitely. You don't sleep much, do you, Cyrill?
I do, actually. You know what? I sleep better now than I slept before Parley.
Why is that?
Because I know what I'm doing, It's good. On the other hand, I'm sitting also in the bathtub long, and I'm thinking about, am I using my time enough, best good enough, and should I be more efficient, or is my focus right? And you don't want to misfire the few arrows that you have,
That's what I mean. No, I was semi-joking when I said you don't sleep much, because there's a lot of issues that you're working on, which I love. So let's talk more about fish and fishing.
Yep.
You mentioned
Love
Sylvia Earle. I have very few heroes in the world, but as far as humans,
God.
I always say that the whales and dolphins are my gurus, but I would put Sylvia in that category for sure. As a hero. She says that fish are friends and we shouldn't eat them. We mentioned Luis Ahoyas, who made the Cove Racing Extinction, the Game Changers, who says that's just not good for our health, let alone the health of the planet. Some top ocean organizations are proponents of quote-unquote sustainable fishing, saying, hey, there's well over 1 billion people on the planet relying on fish as a major part of their diet. Seaspiracy, similar to the Cove, revealed the damaging effects of the current state of the industrial seafood industry. What's your take on this whole thing?
First of all, there is no sustainable fishing. I don't know any. And it makes a lot of sense, And if you're saying all these poor people in these poor countries, they rely on fish, then I wonder why we are sending industrial fishing fleets to their countries to take all their fish, which then often turns them into pirates because they have no livelihood, and then we fight them again and portray them as the devils. So I think there is something there which is totally wrong about that, But if you want people to have their fish because they have nothing else to hunt, then don't send your big fishing fleet there. Let them fish. Let them go out there with their spear or their little nets. This is not why we have the problem. The needs that the local fishers have for themselves is not driving the global fishing crisis. The global fishing crisis is driven by high-tech armadas of boats. And yes, a lot of people portray the Chinese, the Japanese, but hey, there are lots of Europeans. One of the biggest fishing fleet is run by a retail group, Metro in Germany. They also own Jetro here in the US, They are super well organized, and fishing has a very old tradition, in human culture, and I opened a conference in Busan in South Korea and for the government back then about oceans, and they gave me 45 minutes, which is honestly an activist opening a conference that is all about oceans and economy, that shows how they're thinking really. They want to wake up people, And when I spoke after my talk, which pretty much said stop fishing, this is not the future, you're going to go all bankrupt. I thought they're going to kill me, honestly. I thought they're going to throw me out of the room. There was like defense ministers and all the fishing industry in the room. And before me, they showed a trailer of like the oceans being this endless resource. We have to go out and grab it. And they showed all these new high-tech technologies, how you can spot fish and kill it fast. And after my talk, I was like, the room was dead. But then I smiled at everybody and I said, hey, but we all know it, right? And then they applauded. And I was sitting down and 3 guys from the government and one of the biggest fishing fleets came to me and said, we know. Our boats are coming back half empty. Yeah. We know, but what can we do? How can we change? And that's the issue. Again, an old business model. They invested into these fleets. Somebody is paying the banks, somebody is feeding these fishermen that are sitting on these boats. Then you have the retail group. Also there, same situation. You don't want to have all these people like starving for hunger because they're going out of business either. But the truth is, we're hitting the wall. At some point, there will be no fish anymore. And then nobody is served, And then everybody is like sitting there with their like high-tech, stupid boats, So the truth is with fishing that we simply can't afford eating fish. We shouldn't do it. And yes, you can make another point, that's the health point that Louis is putting into the foreground in his work a lot. Of course, it's the accumulation of things in the fish that don't belong there, mercuries, but also plastic, and chemicals that leach out of plastic, and all the other things that are out there, pesticides, fertilizers, nuclear waste. The oceans have been a dumping ground for the last decades and decades, and we are throwing everything in there which we don't want to have anywhere else, or we don't want to afford to discard in a good way. And this is affecting the food that we're then catching and putting back on our table. This is not making any sense. And the issue is that we, to a certain time, we were not so many people on this planet. So we could do these things because there was an abundance, there was this immense size of things. But now we have billions and billions of people. So suddenly we're reaching saturation levels. I don't know if we do already, but I'm sure very soon there's more humans on the planet than other species, and that's an issue. So I think that at this point in time, we should just not eat fish. And if you know these things, I don't know how you can still do it. I didn't make a decision to not eat fish. It just happened. Happened 9 years ago. I went to a Japanese sushi restaurant with friends, and right after we started Parley, they wanted to eat sushi, and I had it on my plate, and I couldn't eat it anymore. It was not possible, And from there on, I never touched it again. And I think if people know enough, if people see enough, and they believe what they see, and they don't think it's like made up to kind of disturb them, if they relate to animals also, if you're a diver and you see how beautiful these animals are down there, it's one thing to feel that a fillet sitting on your plate is beautiful, but if you go down there and you meet the fish, and the fish recognizes you and comes back, and you grow up with these fish, which is a privilege of people who are living with the sea, then there's the other side, and you develop a relationship, and how can you kill your neighbors, your friends, family? And I've seen it firsthand in the Maldives. We have brought 86,000 kids into the water in collaboration with the government. Kids that never were in the water before. They weren't swimming because they thought it's dangerous. And the moment they go down and snorkel and they connect, they change their mind. They're going home and tell their parents, they're like, oh my God, I just saw a manta ray, And they dance or something, And then the parents get curious. And I think that's what has to happen now. We have to kind of rebuild that broken link between us humans and nature. And if we don't love these animals, and that's again Jacques Cousteau quoting here, people only protect what they love, and if there's a benefit for them somewhere on an emotional level. And I really believe that the secret here is in the kids. They can not only build themselves a different relationship to animals, but they can also educate their parents.
That's right. I feel like this is why my octopus teacher has so resonated with people in the last several months. Like, I can't tell you how many people. Actually, I'll tell you a cool little story. So I saw the movie the day that it came out, and then a few months later, I watched it again, and then the next morning I discovered an octopus right in the tide pools here off of Laguna Beach, and I've gone and visited this octopus, and there's actually 7 that I've discovered in the tide pool area. I won't share exactly where they are, but I've been visiting with them every single day, and I can't tell you how many people have said to me in the last couple months, like, oh my God, I saw that movie, it was so amazing, I could never eat an octopus again, right? Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of what you were saying, just it's an awareness, and I think it will come from the kids who'll be like, no. In fact, I love hearing from kids that are vegetarian and be like, how did you become a vegetarian? Was it a slaughterhouse video? Was it like when I talked to Louis why he went vegetarian, stopped eating fish, I should say, is because of mercury poisoning. Mm-hmm. So I've always said, like, I don't really care how you make the decision. Was it a disgusting slaughterhouse video? Was it seeing a beautiful movie like my octopus teacher? Was it realizing how bad it is for your health? Whatever it might be, it's all good if it leads to that.
100%. And we're waiting for the aliens to show up for a long time already, right? and then there are these animals. Yeah, they're already here. God. Well, we are the aliens. I don't know, but somebody is, and we still can't talk to animals, and we are still like thinking they're stupid just because we can lock them into an apartment. I think that's an arrogance that we have to overcome. Just like go on eye level and truly collaborate with nature, and it will reveal itself. I think nature is keeping all the big secrets still hidden from us because we're not ready. We are such a young species on this planet. We are like stomping around and killing what we see, but the moment we're ready, I bet there is so much science to come our way, and also like personal and social new etiquette, and it's just, if you see a person mistreating an animal, then it says a lot about that person.
Yeah. What was it? What was the Gandhi quote that you could, I'm gonna screw it up, but basically you could know everything you need to know about a country based on how they treat their animals. Mm-hmm. Something like that. So let's go back.
Don't worry, I'm the master screwer for
screwing up quotes.
For quotes. Yeah, just like misquoted.
Every mispronounces your name, so you're just getting back at the quotes. So let's go back to Seaspiracy for a minute, because I do want to deal with some of the controversy from that. So I grabbed a quote from the main page of your website from Deanna Cohn, whom we respect for her long-standing work with Plastic Pollution Coalition and holding corporations accountable for their plastic waste. But here's what it says on your site, her quote: "I think, as I understand Parley, the idea is to create an atmosphere of collaboration and to bring disparate parties together who might not meet each other and might not know that they can work together on something." Deanna got called out in Seaspiracy for being aligned with the Earth Island Institute. So my question is, do you think that the filmmakers showed any poor judgment by not getting both sides of this conversation, for not working towards a common cause? They kind of blindsided her and shamed her. Obviously, you and I agree we have a problem with overfishing, ghost netting on the high seas, etc. I don't know, it didn't feel really good the way they treated her. I'm curious what your take was.
I mean, people have very strong reactions towards Plastic Pollution Coalition now, and especially to her. No, we don't take the quote down from our website. And I personally think that people have good days and people have bad days, right? That's what's happening. And people have a certain focus on things, right? And some people care about the animals, others care about humans, and some have a more like a holistic view on things, like we at Parley. Some have a very specific view on things. And that's not only with activists the case, it's also with scientists like that, And I don't want to defend her or attack him. I think they had an encounter and he portrayed that. And there were also things that I didn't know, I never knew that the dolphin safe seal was from the Earth Island Institute, and that actually Plastic Pollution Coalition sits there. Is she an instrument of the fishing industry? I don't think so. I never had that feeling. Is she an anti-fishing activist? No, she's a plastic activist. So I am not bashing other environmental organizations, at least not in public. But I think that the true enemy here is greed. And the true enemy here is, in this specific case, when it comes to overfishing, is the perfectionism that we developed as humans in killing animals, right? And the supply chain and the retail that is associated to it. And I think where I would have seen an improvement possible for the film would have been to call out the retailers that making billions and billions of dollars, and they use these seals. They need these seals. This is an interdependency, where they pick the seals they want and they use them towards the consumer to sell more product, and sometimes they even invent their own seals. And so you could have easily called out Whole Foods or called out Costco or Jetro or Metro or all these like super huge chains which are buying and buying and buying, and they would have the finger on the button to stop that trade with illegal fished animals, or actually, to be honest, to re-educate consumers to eat other products. So I think I understand the frustration, though. That's why I said at the beginning, it is his film. It was his personal experience, and he went very extreme in a way, because that's how we are, to be honest. We are extreme. We think we're doing something right. We feel duped, and we are angry about that. So I think what he made clear is that just following what somebody's writing on a website is probably not the right thing. You have to you have to develop your own knowledge. And that's a lot to expect from a consumer, So my position here is to say, if you don't know where your fish is coming from, then don't eat fish. And at this point in time, you can't know where your fish is coming from unless you catch it yourself. So I would say, don't eat fish. Yeah, it's so simple. I don't eat fish out of different reasons, but one is definitely, or one could be, that you don't want to support people that are doing bad things, And fishing today, especially at industrial level, is potentially bad. That's my assumption here. And I think, honestly, the environmental movement is so used to attack others, they often get a little lazy in doing their own homework. So I would say, in defendance now of the Plastic Pollution Coalition, I would say they just get lazy. They're not used to media asking tough questions. They're not used that somebody would call them out because they think they are powerful and they think they know everybody and they own the stamp of what is right and what is wrong. So it's definitely an humbling experience. And the second is that often organizations, if they don't want to have their own foundations, if they don't want to pay their own lawyers, they go backpack on existing big organizations, And you have to be careful with whom you associate yourself. Very, very careful. And that's something we learned very early at Parley. We said, listen, if we want to promise to the outside world that we're doing something right, not everything, but something right, then we need to know what we're actually doing. That means we have to be on the ground, we have to start our own organizations, we have to earn our own money. And you will always do mistakes, to be honest. You will always do, But I think it's important to just think it through and not to expose yourself to something like that, If you run an environmental organization.
It was a wake-up call for sure. Like you said, everybody has bad days and good days. Not everybody's bad days are seen by millions of people all around the world, though. So,
No, but I mean, honestly, I think nobody in the environmental movement who dedicates their life deserves to be bashed up.
That was my point.
It's not okay. But on the other hand, I understand the filmmaker, and I understand it. And I honestly, but there are definitely real villains out there that are really, really spending billions of dollars in manipulating the way things are being seen. And that is not easy to kind of uncover, that's tough. Then you need, but I think in general, it's always good to get a wake-up call for everybody, and it's for everybody important. We just, as an environmental group, we have to be careful, we have to be smart about what we do. And I think there is also one other aspect. I think a lot in that film happened because people didn't know Ali. And they didn't take him serious. And he was young, He stands for a new generation. And I think there's arrogance. A lot of people behaved arrogant. They sent somebody to take the interview. They didn't believe that this would be Netflix. Now, he will have a hard time to get such naive faces in front of his camera again, because now they know, But I think the problem is if there's a camera involved, or if somebody's really interested, or somebody wants to do something, you have to take your time. You have to take it serious. You have to speak. Either you speak to the people or you don't. But I think it's always better to speak. And that's also when you get attacked in social media. Discuss it out. If people want to have the conversation, have it. If they just want to bash you and troll you, there's a different story. But there are people that want to speak and take it serious. Take people serious, even if they're young and they don't have a fancy name.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, one thing I respect about you is that you don't ever shame or blame people. Instead, you're focused on innovation, creating a better design. That being said, guilt is a powerful motivator, as we've said. And there's, I guess my question is, are there some people and companies that are in need of some shaming and blaming, or is it really just about consumers demanding that better solution?
To be honest, we benefit of organizations that do the more aggressive work. Right? We benefit of people that call others out. We benefit of that because the moment people get scared or they get caught, they want to do something. But we rarely work with people that are motivated by fear. We rarely work with these corporations that just had a scandal. And a lot of them approached us, like big car companies, marine parks even. Oh my God. They came to us and said, this would be good for our image if we'd collaborate with you. And we're like, right, I'm not even taking a meeting with you. But the truth is that we believe in something else. We believe that the best motivation to do something is if people really want to achieve something, if they really have a dream, a vision, and encouragement and inspiration and creativity. So I believe really in design at the end. I believe that if we design alternatives, and be it on a material science level or on a product level or on a service level, whatever level it is, if we create something that is so overwhelmingly beautiful or logic or something, with that we can replace the old. That's what I believe in. And therefore it's always from a more optimistic side, and it's nearly naive. It's like, hey, here's an apple that looks like that, and here's an apple that looks like that. Which one do you pick, And that's what I believe in. I believe that we are smart enough to make good decisions, and we're smart enough to use new technology and promote it as the future. We were able as mankind to sell really old ideas over and over and over again. When you look at your refrigerator, I mean, these are often brands that are around for hundreds of years, So we're selling that stuff over and over and over. Why wouldn't we not go and say there is something new? So that's why I believe in giving people alternatives. But again, I'm grateful for every environmentalist, every activist out there who tries to do their best, and I think they earn respect. And now and the people that are too angry to still lead the organizations, they should probably just take a break and chill.
I mean, honestly, it feels to me, and obviously this is the most time we've ever spent together, I believe my gut of you is that you're choosing, and maybe hopefully it's just who you are at the core, you're choosing to come from a place of love versus fear, from optimism, like, hey, if the whole planet's going to burn to shit, we're going to have a party on the last night. We're going down with the ship, right? Like, that's just kind of who you are, and you just happen to be a designer. You just happen to be leading this revolution. But at the core, and that's why go back to what I said earlier, like, is this about a material revolution, or is this an expansion of human consciousness based on love that needs to occur to create this world that we are envisioning? Does that make sense?
100%. And what you're saying is 100% right. I think the fear kept us alive. We came to this planet and we didn't have the tools. We didn't have the abilities like the sharks. They had been here millions of years before us. They had like big teeth, rapid speed. They could read us. We should not fall into the water with a little scare. Same with the crocodiles and the elephants and the dinosaurs even back then. I mean, these guys were like high-tech developed against us. We were like the naked worms that kind of scrapped the core of a bone, and then we found fire and we saw, oh my God, we can have power, and then all these things happened. But I think in us, like deeply in us, is that fear, and fear of dying, fear of not surviving, knowing about our own possibility of death, right? And this is very narrowing. And when you're looking at everything from politics to advertising to the design of your home, I mean, a lot is fear-based, and why wouldn't we not turn this around and say, hey, the motivation could be, I assume the best, I assume something good can happen. And it's very stressful to be positive also, because I come across probably that everything's so easy, but to be honest, you get punched, and sometimes you also have to be angry and fight back for a moment and tell them, listen, I'm not an idiot just because I'm positive. You can't just steal from me just because I'm like smiling at you and want to see your side, I think people, it's a transition moment, but I think there is a logical trend or a development steering towards positive and love, because we are too many people, we are too many people on this planet. We can only collaborate if we want to survive here, and there's too much beauty on the other side, there's too much to discover, and you will not get that with fear, and that's why I think, to be honest, I believe that our future is in collaboration, right? It's in creativity, it's in eco-innovation, it's in the good things, and we have to leave behind this old idea of like success and leadership where you have to learn to be cruel. Don't take it personal. This is just business. No, business is super personal. It's as personal as it gets. You spend your whole life with that thing. So yeah, take it very personal. Behave like a human. Do the right things. Trust your gut feeling and trust your instincts. And that's what I believe in, and there are very frustrating moments though, I have to say, Rich, where it's super frustrating. Angry moments, disappointed moments. But it's not the moments that decide over this war, It's the duration and the endurance that you show,
It's a long game, that's for sure.
It's a long shot.
I started this conversation by saying that I've had about 2,000 dolphin and whale encounters.
I heard that, trust me.
And one of them was this morning. I started my day with a small pod of 5 bottlenose dolphins. And they were literally within, 20, 30 yards of the beach, right at Main Beach. Have you been here to Laguna Beach before? Mm-hmm. So right in front of the Main Beach lifeguard tower. And I spent, an hour with them. There was 4 adults, including a mom, and then the 5th one was her little baby. And for most of it, I haven't even looked at the video yet, most of it, the baby was just circling around me, and then the baby went over and nursed with the mom and was hanging with the mom, and then the baby would come back over. And I think my point is, after spending this much time with these animals, looking how they collaborate and live in a pod together, it makes it harder for me to go be with the 2-leggeds. When you see the contrast between how these animals live and how they are compared to the craziness of human beings. It's a challenge, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's total peace. It's like there's something so logical and so relaxed in there. Even if they then go and defend themselves, there is something that you can't, it's very difficult to describe. It's magic.
It is magic.
And we are behaving a bit dumb, and it's actually boring, I feel. Like how long can we continue not evolving?
It is boring. Well, this is why I love what you do, because it's like, we could say humans are dumb or we're stupid, but it's more like we're ignorant, meaning we're just
lazy,
lacking knowledge. But now that knowledge is it's starting to become mainstream. The things that you and I probably knew decades ago around how to live a healthier life for our own health, for the sake of the planet, these things were very aggressive thoughts a long time ago, and now they're becoming mainstream. So, like I said, technology happens fast, but the evolution of human consciousness, unfortunately, is kind of a slow thing. In fact, I love what you mentioned earlier, and I've heard this before, how you gave up the need to patent your ideas. I've been saying this for years. I can't take credit for any of my ideas. I didn't think any of them up. They'll just come. Where the hell they come from? Who knows, right? To take credit for an idea seems so egotistical. So how did you come to that decision of just they're not mine?
I think there are 2 levels to that. One is if I say something, if I present something, that means I'm sharing something, and I have to decide what do I want to share. And I decided with Parley that I'm sharing ideas, and even on plans, even if they're not yet brought to life often, right? That means that I say, hey, we plan to do this, and then I show it, and I show a sketch, or I show a rendering, or I say it, And of course that's dangerous, because in this moment you inspire thousands of people in some cases to do the same, But on the other hand, that's what you want,
Yeah.
And I think there are still moments where I think, why wouldn't they have called me and do it together with us, And if they copy you really, and then they tell people nonsense about you, just to be more successful or whatever, then these are moments that I get really disappointed, Somebody says, oh, you know what, we did that first, and we do it better, and they are idiots, and they don't even have an impact. They do that, they speak a lot. That's the funny thing. I think there are lots of supporters for Parley, but there are lots of people that really badmouth us. So that is disappointing. And I would say the majority of things that we do, yes, they're not protected at all. They are revealed. But then there are things that we do protect. That's, for example, our trademark, right? Because if everybody, it gets just like I said, your name, if people run around, they call all themselves Parley, then it gets a bit difficult. So I think when it comes to name, then we are careful. But when it comes on knowledge, ideas, even designs, take it, go for it, I just don't want to be, I would say, we don't want to be mixed up with others, that people think, oh, that's actually Parley, but then it isn't, or take a thought and get that associated with a certain word, and then you just use the word, but you don't do all the legwork that is under it. I think that's just using a wrong label, But in general, I feel that in the time right now, we can just be happy if people are doing the right thing, and more people joining or copying is a success for the movement, and because we are running out of time, and again, one person and one organization alone won't end these problems, So,
Well,
yeah.
This kind of leads to my grand finale question, if you will, related to collaboration. You have obviously this inclusive mindset when it comes to the material revolution, the digital revolution, this merging of design and science and art, really creating a space to unlock our collective ingenuity. So last question, tell me about the global community of innovation that you are creating the framework for.
Yeah, and I hear Zoe, our little Boston Terrier.
Is that a dog that's attacking you?
Yeah, she looks like a seal, but she is jumping around down there.
Oh, I see.
Actually, there she is down there. She's like,
Is that
what
a
is
Harper
going
seal
on?
you have as a pet? I think throw her in the tub.
Yeah, she's like not interested.
She doesn't look like a seal. She looks.
When you look close up. So, yeah, I mean, we built a network over the last 9 years, of course, we did. And we started with like a long list of people that we wanted to kind of know and learn from them, and then build more and more and more out of it. And now I think the ultimate goal is that you have from every industry at least one big player that says, you know what, I'm going to bring this to my industry. You need that because interesting enough, the furniture people don't really learn from the automotive people. They don't really learn, and everybody learns a bit from fashion and art. That's why we started with fashion and art. But there are so many other industries, and often they just feel like, oh, this is not relevant to us because none of their competitor has done it. And so you wanna have in every industry, you wanna have a champion, minimum one, and it's the same for the most important layers in society. And for us, these are is youth. It's a very big piece. The creative industries is a massive piece for us, but including science, because we believe that the responsibility for change lays there, because we invent, we create, we design, and industry normally just scales, and so I feel that we can't blame always the industry. We have to say, listen, we own this as creators. When I put an idea out, then I should know what I'm doing, and if there is a wrong idea out there, then I should replace it and come up with something new, and it's the fastest way to change things is if you come up with a replacement, something better. Then there are governments. We now work with governments. Probably you have seen that we have 10 member states now, where governments say, how can we end these problems in our country? Developing national action plans with them, helping them to totally look at it from a different side and implement our air strategy and support innovators or scientists, And then there are high net worth individuals and wealthy individuals who pretty much run this planet, and own companies or influence governments and get them to understand what they're actually doing with their capital and what they're earning from, and off, and what price others pay for them living in beautiful houses, and make it very personal. And I think that's the big thing that we try to do is we try to connect brain and heart, right? That people understand logically and feel and relate to it, have the personal experience backing that, because I think we have too long maneuvered into an abstract when it comes to very important decisions like business, like how do we treat nature, what do we do to get our food into the refrigerator, it's very, we separated that really nearly from our instincts, But the goal of Parley is to have a network that has 1% of society in it, represented out of these groups that I just described. And I would add to it environmentalists, knowing that it's very often was very hard to work with them, to be honest. But we still have 750 partnerships with other NGOs, often very small ones, because they're still like on it and they have that local, they know what they're doing, they know their country the best and the region, they have an expertise, they're down to the ground, And then athletes. Athletes became also a big supporter of Parley. And we realized that people that are conscious about their body Of course, if they're water sport, then it's a natural, but in general, even runners or soccer players, sports plays a big role for us. And we realize that people that relate to their body, that listen to their body, they're actually potentially very good environmentalists or activists, because there is something natural about that. And they don't want to run around in trash and junkyards, that's the other side, or swim in infested waters, And the network really, the vision is to have that group be able to communicate and engage that group, so we can boost alternatives, but also have a feeler out there all the time and see what's happening. Who has an idea? How can we help? How can we help by putting things together that belong together? How can we help by giving people content and knowledge, specific answers, or at least somebody they can ask, and how can we help by giving them new materials? Doesn't have to be a Parley invention, just new materials, or new products, and that's the idea. Like, equip 1% of society with the knowledge, the assets, and the opportunity to drive change. That's the vision of Parley, and that's what we're doing,
And then just from a practical standpoint, what does that platform look like? Is it a Clubhouse style online thing? Is it in-person events? Is it, where does the community live?
We were, so far, everything in the past happened, it was very event focused, lots of events, be it at the United Nations, be it at artists' homes, be it on boats, expeditions, islands, and it was very selective, to be honest, we knew these 20 people have to sit together, or it was at NASA, JPL in Pasadena or something, or at a university, and it was very specific, and our next step now is to open that up, and we are working on that for a while, because we also don't want to become a social network or something like that. We want to be very, and the interesting thing is every channel, every medium has its own rules, and you want to predict, or you want to try to predict where it leads you towards. And the risk when you're starting an online platform, for example, is that it could totally change you. That suddenly you have to produce all that content and be running behind the train. That's not what you want. Or people send their bullshit content up and they don't. Who curates that? And others have amazing content, but they want to see that they're in the right environment, and others don't. And it gets complicated. So that's why we have been extremely careful, to be honest. But we will release something. Something is coming. Yeah.
Cyrill, you have been extremely kind with your time and your heart and your energy today. I super appreciate it. We're going to share links to everything that we talked about here. I'm going to give you the final word. What's the best way for people to learn about Parley and you and what you're up to and support what you're doing?
Oh, thank you, Rich. First of all, follow us on Instagram, because the algorithm doesn't like us. They shut us down in a way, and we're not buying users. So we're not coming over 242,000 followers, which is weird. So that would help. And sign up on the website, parley.tv. And TV, because we couldn't afford the .com back then when we started. Just come to the website, sign up to the newsletter, and learn about what we're doing. There's a lot of missions that we are now designing for people to participate in. After the pandemic, there will be lots of events, and during the pandemic, we're doing a lot of online stuff, aligning up with people. That's what we do.
I'll say on a personal level, let's have the intention, if you are game, that you and I will meet in the flesh and hopefully out in the water with dolphins and whales surrounding us. Are you game for that?
I would love that. Let's do it. Rich, next meeting in the water.
I really appreciate it. This was great. Like I said, this is the most time we've ever got to spend together, and I feel like that we took the time to really go deep, and I really appreciate learning not just about your organization and what you're doing, but really about you as a human being. So thank you so much.
Same here.
Myself and everybody watching. All right, that's our show, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the support. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, bro. Thank you. Cheers.